The battlefield stretched across the crimson plains of Vakros III, a planet that had become the latest theater in the centuries-old war between the Krillian Empire and the Zetharian coalition. Commander Xa stood at the vanguard of her strike force, her four arms gripping plasma rifles with deadly precision, her violet eyes scanning the horizon through the acrid smoke that rose from burning John vehicles and scorched earth. She had fought in 47 major engagements across 12 star systems. She had killed warriors from 6 different species. She had earned 17 citations for valor and the personal commendation of the Empress herself. Fear was a concept she had abandoned long ago, left behind in the training barracks of her youth. But then she saw IT.AT first. It was just a silhouette emerging through the smoke. Bipedal, shorter than most combat species, moving with an almost leisurely gait that seemed absurdly out of place on a battlefield where plasma fire and particle beams carved glowing scars through the air. Xa-Thri's tactical display flickered, attempting to identify the newcomer species, and when the result flashed across her retinal implant, she froze. Human. The word appeared in stark crimson letters, accompanied by a cascade of warning symbols that she had never seen before. Her neural combat processor, a piece of military hardware that had cost more than a small starship, began flooding her consciousness with contradictory data. Threat assessment, maximum. Recommended action, withdraw immediately. Secondary recommendation, request orbital bombardment. Xa-Thri had served in the Krillian military for 20 cycles. Never, not once, had she seen her combat system recommend orbital bombardment as a response to a single infantry combatant. The human continued walking forward, and as the smoke cleared, Xa-Thri could see him more clearly. He wore armor that looked almost primitive by galactic standards, segmented plates of some dark composite material, lacking the shimmer of energy shields or the telltale glow of integrated weapon systems. In his hands, he carried what appeared to be a chemically propelled kinetic weapon, the kind of technology most species had abandoned millennia ago. That he looked, by all objective measures, laughably outmatched. Commander, Lieutenant Vextra's voice crackled through Xa-Thri's comm unit. Should we engage? Xa-Thri didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was racing through fragments of intelligence reports she had read, stories she had dismissed as propaganda or exaggeration. Humans were a recent addition to the galactic stage, their homeworld having only been discovered within the last 5 standard years. They had refused to join either major faction in the war, declaring themselves neutral. But there were rumors, whispers in the officers' mess halls, classified reports that circulated among high command, stories of human mercenaries who had appeared on various battlefields, always in small numbers, always on the losing side. And wherever they appeared, the tide of battle shifted in ways that defied tactical analysis. One human had reportedly held a choke point against an entire battalion for 6 hours. Another had infiltrated a heavily fortified command center and eliminated everyone inside, without triggering a single alarm. That a third had survived orbital bombardment by sheltering in a cave system, then proceeded to wage a guerrilla campaign that destabilized an entire planetary occupation. Xa-Thri had read these reports with skepticism. Now, watching the human approach, that skepticism evaporated like morning frost under a plasma strike. The human stopped approximately 200 meters from Xa-Thri's position. For a long moment, he simply stood there, his helmeted head slowly turning as he surveyed the battlefield. Xa-Thri could see the bodies of Zetharian soldiers scattered across the plain, her enemies, killed in the fighting that had raged for the past 3 days. Then the human moved. That he didn't run. He didn't charge. He simply started walking again, this time at an angle that would take him toward the Zetharian defensive line, a fortified position that had resisted 3 separate Krillian assaults. All units. Xa-Thri found her voice, though it sounded strange even to her own auditory receptors. Hold position. Do not engage the human. Commander. Vextra sounded confused. He's heading toward the enemy fortifications. He'll be torn apart. I said hold position. Xa-Thri repeated, her tone sharp enough to cut through steel. She watched through her rifle's optical enhancer as the human approached the Zetharian lines. The defenders, clearly spotting him, opened fire. Particle beams lanced through the air, plasma bolts created brief supernovas of incandescent energy, and railgun rounds moved at hypersonic speeds, creating sonic booms that echoed across the plain. The human dodged, not with the preternatural speed of genetic enhancement or the predictive algorithms of a combat AI, but with something else, something that XA3's analytical mind struggled to categorize. He moved like water, like smoke, like he knew where each shot would be before it was fired. He rolled, ducked, and sidestepped with an efficiency of motion that seemed almost choreographed. And then he returned fire. The primitive kinetic weapon barked, a harsh, percussion sound that was almost quaint compared to the whine and hiss of energy weapons. But where it struck, Zetharian soldiers fell. The human's aim was impossibly precise. Headshots at ranges that should have been difficult even for computer-assisted targeting systems. His weapon never seemed to run dry. Or perhaps he reloaded with such fluid motion that XA3 couldn't track it. The Zetharian defensive line, which had held against 3 Krillian assaults supported by armor and airstrikes, began to crumble. By the void, Vextrail whispered over the comm, "He's alone. He's completely alone, and he's winning." XA3 watched as the human breached the first defensive barrier. A Zetharian warrior, easily twice the human's mass, armed with a vibroblade capable of cutting through battle armor, charged him. The human didn't retreat. Instead, he moved forward, inside the arc of the blade, and did something with his hands that XA3 couldn't quite follow. The Zetharian warrior collapsed, his neck bent at an angle that evolution had never intended. The human picked up the warrior's vibroblade and continued forward. What happened next would haunt XA3's dreams for years to come. The human carved through the Zetharian position like a natural disaster made flesh. He used every weapon available: his kinetic rifle, the captured vibroblade, his own armored fists, even the environment itself. He collapsed support structures to create barriers, triggered enemy munitions to create diversions, and moved with a tactical awareness that suggested he could see the entire battlefield in his mind. But it wasn't his combat efficiency that truly terrified XA3. It was his endurance. Zetharians were renowned for their stamina. They could fight for days without rest, their triple heart system pumping oxygen-rich blood through muscles enhanced by millions of years of evolution on a high-gravity world. But the human outlasted them. He didn't slow down. He didn't show signs of fatigue. When he took hits, and he did take hits, his armor showing scorch marks and carbon scoring, he simply adjusted his tactics and continued. 20 minutes after he had entered the Zetharian fortifications, the firing stopped. The human emerged from the smoke, walking back across the battlefield toward XA3's position. His armor was damaged, his gait slightly uneven, but he was walking. Behind him, the Zetharian defensive line, the objective that XA3 had been ordered to capture at any cost, burned. That he stopped again, this time closer, perhaps 50 meters away. XA3 could see him more clearly now. He was bleeding, dark red blood that seemed almost black in the alien light of Vacros 3's twin suns. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths that she could hear even at this distance. That he raised one hand, not in threat, but in what her cultural database identified as a wave, a human gesture of greeting. Then he spoke, and his words came through on the universal combat frequency that all military forces monitored. "The position is secure. You're welcome." His voice was rough, tired, but touched with something that sounded like dark humor. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing back into the smoke from which he had emerged. XA3 stood motionless for a full minute after he vanished. Around her, her soldiers murmured in shock and confusion. Finally, she activated her command channel. "All units, advance and secure the position. And someone get me a direct line to high command." Immediately, as her soldiers moved forward to claim the objective that one human had captured alone, XA3 accessed her personal logs and began recording. Combat report, supplemental. "Today I witnessed something that changes my understanding of warfare. I have reviewed our intelligence on humanity, and I believe we have made a critical error in our assessment." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Humans are not advanced in technology. They do not have genetic enhancements or cybernetic augmentation beyond basic medical necessity. Their weapons are primitive, their armor rudimentary by our standards. But they have something else, something that cannot be quantified by our tactical systems or predicted by our combat algorithms. "They come from a death world," she continued. "Their planet is classified as Category 9 hazardous environment. a world that should not have produced sapient life. They evolved alongside predators that could kill them in seconds. They survived ice ages, plagues, volcanic eruptions, and countless other extinction-level events. Every day of their evolution was a battle for survival. And it shows. Humans don't fight the way we do. They don't see combat as a political tool or a means to an end. When a human enters a battlefield, they bring with them millions of years of survival instinct, refined by constant predation and environmental hostility. They are persistence hunters. They don't need to be faster or stronger than their prey. They just need to outlast them. HFY looked across the plain toward where the human had disappeared, her four hands trembling slightly, a reaction she had thought herself incapable of. "I froze today," she admitted into the recording. "Not from fear, but from recognition. I have spent my entire career learning to be a warrior. But when I saw that human walk onto the battlefield, I realized something profound. I learned to be a warrior. Humans were born to it. Every cell in their body, every instinct in their mind, was shaped by a crucible that would have destroyed most species." Recommendation for High Command. Under no circumstances should the Krillian Empire engage humanity in direct conflict. We may have superior technology, greater numbers, and longer military tradition, but they have something far more dangerous. They have the accumulated survival instincts of a species that should have gone extinct 1,000 times, but refused to die. She ended the recording and transmitted it up the chain of command, knowing that it would likely be dismissed or buried. Officers didn't advance their careers by recommending caution or suggesting that any species was superior to the Krillian Empire in any way. But HFY didn't care about her career anymore. She had seen a human on the battlefield, and she understood now why her combat system had recommended orbital bombardment. Not because one human could defeat an army, though based on what she had witnessed, she wasn't sure that was impossible, but because humans represented something that the galaxy's established military powers had forgotten. Humans were survivors, and survivors, by definition, were the ones still standing when everyone else had fallen. HFY led her troops forward to secure the position. She couldn't shake one final thought. If one human could do this much damage, what could humanity accomplish? If they ever decided to abandon neutrality and choose a side in the galactic conflict, she hoped, with every fiber of her being, that she would never have to find out.